We're trying to be very authentic. Like, we're building a pub that we want to go to ourselves, and like we're solving a unfulfilled need. Could get Hayden James playing a Sunday session. Albo was there as well. You could have Hugh Jackman performing. One of the biggest sets we've ever had was the Wiggles.
Yeah.
They were meant to play for like 45 minutes, and they did like an adults only set, and they played for over 2 hours. I think we built upon that notion of you never know what's going to happen at Old Mates. Even though Bluestone opened and was successful, like, I did not get paid a cent for the first 3 years. I funded, half the money, and I was prepared to lose that. I just knew that I can make it up, and I'm going to learn so much. I'm so glad I did, because I had, real skin in the game. When COVID hit and we lost 87% of our revenue in 2 weeks, and I had to fire maybe 700 staff on 2 Zoom calls.
All right, we've got our first guest in the hot seat back in Melbourne. It's nice to be back, but it would have been even nicer if we got to sit down with this man over where he lives now and where he's just running the joint. Mr. Nick Stone, welcome to the Dos&D show.
Yes, Nick.
Thanks, guys.
It's good to finally
intro.
have you on.
Yeah, no, great to be here. I'm sorry for the logistical challenges in the US. We're trading different coasts, and I've been hard to pin down a little bit, but thanks for persisting, and great to be here in the headquarters in
HQ.
Melbourne.
Mate, we're just
so honoured.
We are just grateful to have you. We're so excited. We've been looking forward to it. But like I said to you, we've just been sifting through all this content that we've got from the States, and we spend an awful lot of time looking at Old Mate's Pub. Now, we look at Instagram overnight. Hugh Jackman was in there dominating.
Kate Hudson with him
Kate Hudson as well. Some unbelievable names. But maybe that's a good place to start. Talk to us about Old Mates a little bit and how it's all going.
Well, it's going very well.
Clearly.
He's repping the hat as well.
Yeah, I am actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hot today. It's beautiful weather in Melbourne finally. We've had all sort of, raining cats and dogs and windy, and I get terrible hay fever when I come back to Melbourne. But that's, I'm digressing now. But
it doesn't exist in the States, we noticed.
No, it doesn't.
Well, for a videographer, it did.
Yeah, that's true.
That Old Mates is going really well. It's been open about nearly 8 months. And it really just was inspired by missing something that we really valued. And I think Eddie and I started talking about it and socialising in 2021. So I basically survived the first year of COVID, which decimated both of our businesses. My hospitality business called Bluestone Lane, and Eddie had a number of restaurants, and they were both centred around New York. And it was extremely challenging to operate for that year. And then, we were on down the coast at a friend's holiday house, and we started to reminisce about how many great Australian bars had a formative impact on our journey and living in New York, and we missed them, and we just couldn't believe that they're all gone. And COVID certainly was the nail in the coffin for a number of them, but even predating that. They had expired, or they'd just moved on, or just frankly closed. And, I think that we're both big believers in community and bringing people together and having spaces where you can celebrate, and it's more casual, but, you've got a familiarity. You're a local, and, I think that we just thought, what a incredible part of Australian culture, that you have these hospitality venues that really just drive such regularity and patronage and community and just human connection. And we're kicking around the idea, and I think neither of us wanted a big, I think had originally big plans and this ambition of a very large venue, which is what we've ended up with. And we started looking quite small, but after reviewing a lot of different spaces and trying to find the right one in Manhattan, we landed on this option in the Seaport. And at that time, we started to have conversations with Andy Lee and my brother Andy Stone about forming the nucleus of this team. And from there, it's sort of just taken its a life of its own. But it's amazing to work with someone like Eddie, who's one of my closest friends, and I've known since I moved to New York in 2010. Eddie moved in 2009. He actually came across to manage the Australian, which is one of those Australian bars that I referred to. And he's a bit of a creative genius, and it's it's very popular and a lot of fun. And I think the programming has really sort of taken the New Yorkers and the Americans in particular about that. You can go to a venue and watch sport, and then you can head upstairs to the harbour room and have a more sort of refined dinner or lunch. And then if you really want to get your dancing shoes on and head down to the sticky carpet lounge in the cellar and kick on. And it's been a great journey thus far.
The marketing element is something that I think gets probably overlooked, because from what Eddie kind of told us when we popped our head in and we got to sit down and have lunch with him, it's almost like the marketing has been purely pushed to here, all of us here in Australia. It's not really all of us Aussies. Whenever we're going over there, we want to pop in there. He was more or less talking about how it's just purely been on Aussies, the marketing. Is that kind of the way it's been?
Yeah, I think, we're trying to be very authentic. Like, we're building a pub that we want to go to ourselves, and like, we're solving a unfulfilled need, really. That's why we created it. So I think it's absolutely Australian influence and eccentric in like all facets. We don't want to do anything kitsch or that's like commercial, superficial. Like, we're building it like we would be building it if we opened it in Melbourne or in Sydney. And most of us are from Victoria, actually, so it's got a very heavy
Bit biased. Yeah.
Melbourne or Victorian influence. And you've got a group that all have a lot of creative ideas, and I think that's just been liberated through a lot of conversations. But the ideas that we had back in 2021, 2022, whether that's the meat tray raffle or trivia nights or sponsoring the local footy teams and having the sticky carpet lounge, like, they were all very organic things that we talked about, and 2 to 3 years before the pub actually opened. So we're really just like implementing that playbook. And then I think that you've just got an amazing opportunity to tap that creative mind of like Andy Lee and Andy Stone, and we're all doers and we all execute. Sometimes it's hard because we've all got opinions, and some of those at times can be pretty forceful and strong. But we've obviously got incredibly high profile, partners involved, and they will often lean in and want to, they're very proud of the pub, so they'll want to be involved. So even last night with Hugh, that was organic. Like, that's not us like calling Hugh and asking him to come in and perform and dance on the bar. Like, that's really organic. And the ideas around getting the bell from the Bells Beach Pro and having the generosity of Rip Curl, and that's obviously through Mick Fanning, and then Andy Lee was heavily involved there, and then the merch side, Andy Stone got really involved. So like, we're very much a team, but the direction and the execution and actually taking the risk and biting the bullet and being very, very clear on the strategy, it started many years in advance, and I think it was just a ton of conversations and time together between Eddie and I, and it was something that took a life of its own. Like, there was no guarantees that it was going to be an Old Mates. Like, neither of us really needed to do it. We already had jobs and successful businesses, but it just kept luring us. And then I'm incredibly proud, and I'm so glad we did it, because it's just a lot of fun, and people on what I call punters have a great time. And the fact that Aussies have put it on their bucket list when they visit New York, and there's a lot that do, is pretty. It's a pretty glowing endorsement that we're on the right thing. And I think the execution's been amazing. And like, the huge shout out to the team. Like, they have the hard job, and we brought in incredible leadership and talent, and that was a thing that we had to our advantage because of the success of Bluestone and the success of Tuxedo Hospitality. When Australians were leaving high-profile jobs to join Old Mates, they had trust that, okay, they're dealing with two entrepreneurs or leaders that have built very credible businesses in the US and particularly in New York. And that was certainly a big comfort level. Yeah.
When we were talking to Eddie and Brad actually as well, they were talking about the launch of it and the huge queues out the doors, and then even having to close the doors because the beer ran out. Can you talk to us about the launch of it, and did you expect kind of this kind of success out of the gate?
Well, the launch party, we did not have our beer taps that were being manufactured in Australia, so we had to improvise, and we ended up bringing in cans, and we blew through those in like an hour, I think. It did hit from the start. Like it was pretty incredible. The preview party to have Andy Lee and Hamish Blake there, who are two beloved, very high profile and just like great people, humble, and the crowd was just drawn to this idea, and I think we built upon that notion of you never know what's going to happen at Old Mate's sake. You may run out of beer.
Yeah.
You may have a new beer on tap. You might have a new performer or an item. And then, after that, we had a period where we had to install the taps and finish the space. And, we had a few other sort of complexities, which in building in New York, you're always going to inevitably run into. But the opening party, I think, was the one for me where I was just taken back, because about 2 days beforehand, we got this rumor that Dom Dollar was quite interested in playing the opening party. And it just kept gathering momentum, and he had his team in and his crew in. And ultimately, it was our understanding that Dom Dollar could play anywhere as a secret show prior to his 2 sold-out Madison Square Garden concerts. He's the first electronic dance music artist to sell out MSG 2 nights in a row. So big deal, and sold, I think, like 30,000+ tickets. And, sure enough, Dom agrees to play, and I think he agreed to play for like 45 minutes, and on the condition that he played from the bar. So he wasn't interested in playing downstairs, and he was also, he wanted to like assimilate with like the position of a barback or a bartender. So he wanted the rag over the shoulder, he wanted to be in the black t-shirt, and he wanted the decks on the bar and to be able to pour beers and hand out beers while he's DJing. So I don't think any of us understood like how mental that was going to go, and just looking outside the pub and just people clamoring to trying to get in, and we're a full house and there's just people everywhere, and that was opening night. That was absolutely unforgettable. And I remember standing in the bar in the middle of the main bar with Eddie and Eddie's partner, like my wife Alexandra, was standing together, and my brother. It was just like an absolutely, if you could just bottle that energy, but like after it, you're literally like, the genie's out of the bottle now. Like this is just going to run, and it's going to be, and if we can execute really well, we focus on the service. If we can make people feel good every time they come in and just lean into those like classic Australian centricities, like I knew the food would get there, and that I knew that we'd get the beer sorted and we'd bring out more Australian beer, but it's just hit. And then from there, this whole notion of, you never know what you're going to get. So you could get Hayden James playing a Sunday session. You could get Monty Franklin doing, a comedy night. You could have Hugh Jackman performing. One of the biggest sets we've ever had was the Wiggles.
Yeah.
They were meant to play for like 45 minutes, and they did like an adults only set, and they played for over 2 hours. And you had not a child in the venue. All their parents singing along, everything from, Rockabye Baby through to, covers, and, Vance Joy played. That was absolutely, incredible. Mick Fanning ringing the bell for the first time, shouting the bar. Yeah, they're all, you can understand why Aussies want to get there.
Yeah.
It's in New York City, and they're proud of their hospitality culture. And
by the way, our videographer who was with us on the trip, was it your best palmer you've ever had, you said? Bryce?
Yeah, it was a good palmer.
Yeah, so that's an endorsement too.
There's a nice photo of Kevin Rudd. Is that Kevin Rudd?
Kay Rudd there.
Yeah, wow.
Well, we had the Prime Minister. That's the night. Albo was there as
Really?
well. He came in after the UN General Assembly, and he had a pretty grueling and exhausting week. And
Let his hair down.
keeping it like very politically correct. And I think he ended up spending a few hours in the sticky carpet lounge.
Oh,
a
did
few
he?
cold ones, and I think just blowing off some steam, which he deserved. But like it's been we've had also just. We've had people that come in on their bucket list trip. Their once in a lifetime trip to New York. They could be in their 70s and they're still fully mobile, and they're traveling, and they've toured Wall Street and they want to finish at Old Mates.
Wow.
And they're so proud and they have a great time. And then you've got Ed Sheeran in there. Like a couple of weekends ago, just walked in. I remember like the opening night when Dom played, Zach Bryant was at the bar just ordering, a couple of schooners. And we were shaking our heads like the country superstar. Oh yeah, he's upstairs. And I was like, what? And we walked upstairs. He was just sitting at the bar. And like that's a huge part of everything I've done with hospitality is certainly treating everyone in a very sort of balanced, egalitarian way and respectful of all patrons and making everyone feel like a local. So, nothing that's super VIP and no photos. Just make it organic and give people a place to come and enjoy and be themselves. And if you execute really well around the hospitality, most likely come back again and they'll advocate for you. And thus far, Old Mates has delivered into that proposition. And we're just getting started now.
Yeah.
It could go in any direction.
This episode with Nick Stone is brought to you by Moomoo.
Meet Moomoo AI, your new edge in the market.
It helps you spot trends, track real-time data, and make sense of what's happening in the markets.
Now, it's not financial advice, but it's a much smarter way to explore the markets.
Download Moomoo today and try the AI for yourself.
Back to the episode with Nick Stone.
There's no, it seems like Americans love it too, and big American names too. There's no, you're stepping on our shoes, you Aussies, like this is our turf.
No, I think it's so different. And, there's elements of the American sports bar and then there's elements which are like completely unique. I don't think there's many spaces that I've been to in the US where you have sort of multi-purpose or multi-venues within one larger, property. And that's what works so well. So, and I've been there on Saturday nights where we have 450 punters, and then there's a whole group in the main bar watching sport and boisterous and celebrating and beer spilling on the floor and people like shoulder to shoulder. Then upstairs there'll be people playing cards or games or like on dates and and sort of you feel like you're in a quarantine in a different environment. And then you head downstairs and it's just sweaty and there's just a plume of just different fluid hanging in the air and perspiration, and it's just fun and people are they're having they're going wild dancing and we try and really focus on the music that gets everyone going. The party starters, the big bangers. We're not at the most cutting edge down there, but we play what the people want, and it's just fun. And everything's done with authenticity. Like nothing. We don't do anything that we think's that one won't stand the test of time, or two isn't influenced or aligned with things that we've seen over our journeys and going to a lot of pubs around Australia. And then, we obviously build upon that and have our own interpretation, and it's played out well.
So that launch versus the launch of Bluestone Lane or the initial pop-ups, like if you could take us back to that period in your life and maybe the difference, and just share with the audience a bit of a backstory on you in terms of getting to New York. I'm sure we'll cover footy a little bit later on, but investment banking and then this idea that you had on the side with coffee. Can you maybe share a little bit about that thought and then how you kind of edged your way into the market?
Sure. Well, I ended up in New York in 2010. I was chasing my girlfriend, who became my wife, Alexandra, who got a contract to work in the US as a fashion model. So I was desperate to get over there and I didn't want to let her go. And I ended up studying as part of my MBA, and then I was fortunate to be transferred. And when I got there, I just couldn't believe how different the coffee culture was. We got coffee as a team every morning. It was a daily ritual. It wasn't just the beverage per se, and I wasn't a massive coffee drinker. It was walking to the elevator together and then walking down and, in this case, going down a cobblestone laneway out the back of Collins Street, and everyone had their favourite place, and it was really determined by their relationship with the proprietor or the barista. And, I decided after, a couple of years of vacillating and considering, like, should I really do it? I didn't really know anyone in hospitality, had no hospitality experience. I had one job in one gig ever in hospitality. I worked in a wedding out in like Bendigo when my brother was the catering manager when he was at uni. This is after footy. I was, desperate for work. And all I had was the customer centricity. I knew what it was like as a customer to have a great experience as a local, and I had business acumen, so I could understand how businesses generally made money or how they could manage risk, and I had good understanding, I think, of like marketing and customer value proposition and product market fit and stuff like that. And then I had the financial acumen of hopefully being able to raise money and manage money, and so I just thought, well, why don't I just focus on these small hole-in-the-wall coffee shops and improve the amenity of the building? So a lot of them had Starbucks, or a lot of them had lobbies where they didn't have that coffee shop that acts as a catalyst to bring people together. Like, you'd walk in the great buildings in Melbourne or in Sydney or in Hong Kong, and they'd have a great cafe, and you'd see people socialising and catching up, and it becomes a very non-threatening, I'd just say, like, balanced environment to catch up with someone. Rather, in a boardroom, there's asymmetry to a degree. Like, you're in my office, in my boardroom. Like, I just found as a banker, like, getting a coffee would often like liberate better ideas and conversation and transparency, and might give you a little edge.
100%.
And, so I just thought, okay, well, I started one around the corner from where I worked. I was at 277 Park Avenue in JP Morgan building, so 47th and Park. Ended up opening one in a Class B building, not a Class A, and it wasn't in the lobby. This basically didn't have a lobby. It was down this escalator. There's no possible way you could find this, like, literally. There's no signage. We weren't allowed like a sandwich board, decal, nothing. The only way you could find it, and this was very early. Like, if you think about 2013, like, Instagram really only got going in like 2012. The only way to really find it is maybe on Yelp, but really it's about word of mouth, and that's still today is the most important component of hospitality marketing. Like, it's advocacy, it's word of mouth, it's unsolicited promotion from your friends, and then of course, like maps and reviews on, particularly Google ratings has become the holy grail, because people use that to drive trial, and once they have a good experience, they then advocate. So it's a reinforcing sort of circle. So the first one opened, and honestly, it opened and it was a hit. And I didn't know it was going to either, but to put it in perspective, selling 300 coffees a day is a bit different from selling like 300 margaritas or icy. It's a different
the margin
pricing
is different.
strategy, and a little bit of margin difference. But I think, again, everything was inspired by the coffee experiences that I missed from home. I wasn't trying to sort of engineer anything for the US market. It was like, I thought that there'd be people like me that missed better quality coffee, quality food, but most importantly, like the service element. I was not this, pretentious sort of stuck-up foodie and this massive coffee snob. Like, I still drink coffee with milk in it, so you can't really claim to be like cutting edge on the coffee circle.
What's your go-to? What is it?
Well, here I drink Magics.
Of course,
because I reckon Melbourne coffee's weak. Like, I'm shocked. Like, in the US, like we in Bluestone, which is basically what I exclusively drink, it's double shot everything. And here, you order a flat white, and it's like a single shot.
Well, I always order an extra shot.
Yeah,
always.
So,
I love the quote about 1 minute prior to that, I'm not a coffee snob.
Yeah,
straight to the magic.
Now, we serve 115,000 people, locals a week, so you become more educated over time. And I've been at this for a few years now, but very observant.
That's a good word, actually.
Yeah.
This episode of the dos&d Show with Nick Stone is brought to you by our mates Fleet Plan Hire Solutions.
They sort out all the toughest logistics when it comes to everything earth moving and big projects, but they're great when it comes to tight deadlines as well.
Absolutely. It ties in well with this episode, actually. We're talking a lot about logistics and growing and tight deadlines. And Fleet Plan Hire Solutions, they do that all for your earth-moving needs. Visit fph.com.au right now to find out more information today.
Back to the episode with Nick Stone.
So, I've become I've become a scholar of the hospitality industry, and I think that that's really helped. The fact that I didn't have any formal training or prejudice around the way things should be made and where you should invest. I very much formulated the strategy based on playing in team sports, and also investment banking was like a team sport. This customer centricity, this focus on the experience. What did I value as a guest? What did I value as a local? And then, having the financial acumen to hopefully be able to understand the dollars and cents and the cash flow, and hopefully be able to position the business and pitch to raise capital to grow. So the first one opened in Midtown Manhattan, and it was a very strategic position because it was surrounded by Australian banks. So it was where Westpac was, CBA, ANZ's headquarters in New York, and Macquarie. So a lot of the Aussies acted as the tastemakers, the trailblazers. They dragged their US friends in, and they had probably a pretty closed, myopic view like me on Starbucks. Like, I had no idea Starbucks was worth, at that stage in 2010, it was worth about 95 billion US market cap. Like, that's
Back
bigger.
then.
Yes, it's like bigger than BHP. And Australians talk about Starbucks with such pride that we kicked them out of the country.
We definitely
failed.
do.
They didn't make it, and our independent specialty coffee culture showed them, and that's pretty wild, right? Like, at that stage, they probably had about 20,000 locations. So this awakening, like, if they've built a business this big and generating this amount of free cash flow, and having such an influence on the cultural zeitgeist, like, they introduced the US to espresso coffee. Prior to Starbucks, in America, you drank drip. And it's funny, like, in Australia, no one drinks drip coffee.
No.
You had, like, I think, you had espresso, which was driven by Italian and Greek and Maltese migrants pre and post World War II. And then you had, I think, a bit of this percolated, like, instant coffee. A lot of people had instant coffee at home, and then you had a little bit of French press, but like, the Americans just sat on a big cup of Joe, and Starbucks were the trailblazers, and they introduced them to espresso, and they did an amazing job democratizing it and making it socially acceptable, that it wasn't just for the elites or for those who were particularly sophisticated, and they commercialized it in a way that really hasn't been seen anywhere in the US, or if not globally. So we are a lot of, indebted to Starbucks, but I just thought there has to be an alternative that a better coffee, better food, made to order food, healthy food, or most foods processed, or in the case of Starbucks, it comes in a plastic wrapper with nitrogen. So it's what they call modified atmospheric packaging. So it means that basically it doesn't go stale, and it's made in the Midwest, shipped in, frozen, and then they zap it in a microwave, basically like a turbo chef. And there's your egg and bacon roll. And I just thought, well, why can't we just make avocado smash? Why can't we have, open sandwiches or jaffles? Or why can't we have, proper granola cups or chia puddings or something like that? But then, we opened the second store in the Stock Exchange, and then the third location we opened in West Village. And that's where Alexander and I lived. And we lived in West Village for 10 years. And, we opened it, and we were just really fortunate that within the first 2 weeks, Taylor Swift walks in, and then Taylor Swift came back again. And in fact, I do owe Steph Claire Smith. So this is in 2000, and so this one opened in 2014, in May 2014. I had met Steph Claire Smith through a couple of mates, and at that stage, Tony Pantano was the general manager, and he's gone on to have a lot of success with Julian Moussi and Only Hospitality. So they have the Beehive, and they have they've got a ton of different cafes around the place. They had Juliet bakery stores, and they had Bentwood, and just different cafes around Melbourne. And basically, Chappie brought this guy, Chappie, a great guy. He knew Steph or whatever. I didn't really know of her, and obviously she's pretty successful, and she was great. But anyway, she went to a Pilates class and brought in Taylor Swift, and then Taylor Swift came back the next day. But it also gave me incredible insight to the challenges of fame, because she was sitting in the back room, and she had literally an emergency exit. Like, the security were there, and then they got a car pulled up, SUV, and they got her out of there and put her in the car And, we didn't see her for a number of years, but basically they'd identified a stalker or obsessive. And you think about who it would be. Oh, is this male in his 30s or 40s and a bit creepy? No, it's like typically, it's commonly like young women who are so obsessed, and they have really dark thoughts and maybe dark intentions. And yeah, she got out of there. But what was so special about that cafe, and we called it Collective Cafe because it was inspired by this collective effort of friends, primarily Australians, that helped us design it and build it and staff it and advocate for it. It was, we in West Village, you have a lot of high-profile people. You have a lot of celebs that just live somewhat of a normal life. Yeah. And we opened it, and it was just extraordinary because you'd have Malcolm Gladwell in there writing a book, his next book, and I was obsessed with Gladwell as an author. And then you'd have David Beckham walk in, then you'd have Jared Butler walk in, and then we had a couple of really incredible things that helped us. When we opened it, we didn't realise that the number one spray tan place in downtown Manhattan was like next door to us. And sure enough, all the Victoria's Secret girls would go next door and get spray tans, or they go on the electric beach or whatever, and then they come into
straight to Avo and toast and a coffee.
They come in the cafe the next day and have their piccolos or their cold brew and grain bowls or what have you. And so suddenly, you had Gigi Hadid and Bella Hadid, and then you had the Kardashians, and then you had wow. And this was peak of its powers when VS really had a big influence on fashion and they were the faces of all the big luxury campaigns. And then I'll never forget like the day when Sarah Jessica Parker started coming regularly, and that was a sort of a doff to the hat because I grew up. And this is a confession, like I used to love Sex and the City. And I think it was part of it because I was infatuated with like trying to live in New York. I wanted to live in the world's capital. And I was so enthralled by this mixture of fashion and entertainment and hospitality and commerce and Wall Street and sports, like all on this one island, and the density and the dream of trying to make it in New York. So when SJP's there, and then... I'll never forget the day I saw Cameron Diaz queuing outside in the snow, and I went up to Tony and said, why is Cameron Diaz sitting outside in the snow? And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? That's the only spot I had. And she was in the queue, and I said, you can either wait for a spot inside or you can sit outside. And she wanted to sit outside. And I think, that just, again, played in the authenticity of the proposition and who we are. And I think it's such a critical Australian value, that humility, and since then, Bluestone's taken a bit of a life of its own. It's had some big ups and some big downs, but the brand's still, I think, such a great representation of Australian coffee culture and wellness and lifestyle culture. And we're very lucky that we just had a great partnership with Khloe Kardashian the last couple of weeks, and she was in the doing shooting in the store. And we did a huge thing with AG1 on wellness, on run clubs actually, and we had something like 20 or 30,000 people sign up for our run clubs, which started on every, originated at every sort of individual Bluestone cafe, and that was within like a couple of months. And a huge acknowledgement to, like, there's so many people that have helped along the way. My brother is a bit of a partnership, creative brand genius, and he's so helpful from that perspective, and such a great partner in the business. And then, the team, and then, Alexandra, my wife, like she's always on the edge, so good at trend forecasting and artistry, and like seeing how it's playing out. And it's been a wild journey, but something like we're extremely proud of. And I think that what I didn't appreciate, and I find that this is a pretty common theme, that when you become an expat and you move away from Australia and you're away for a substantial period of time, you become, I think, an even bigger advocate for the Australian way of life and the values. And I think it's easy to have a very critical lens in Australia, and that whole tall poppy syndrome, and looking for faults before looking at how many things are actually going well. And I don't think you appreciate it enough until you live overseas and you see like real structural challenges and class wars and inequality on the scale that it's hard to comprehend. And Australia's not perfect, but jeepers, it is just an extraordinary, lucky place, and very different from a lot of places that I've worked or visited or travelled. And even the US, like the US is a pretty interesting place. And New York is not really the US. It's probably a continent to itself. So, yeah.
Well, it's mind-boggling to think about what you've created, and hearing a couple of those references is just amazing. So congratulations. That's unbelievable. I'd love to maybe rewind a little bit, because, you know, to go from investment banking to then the idea and the concept of Bluestone, when is it when you take the leap to go full time? Because that's probably nearly one of the hardest things as a business person, or creating something of your own, is the safety net of my job to then, shit, if this all goes wrong, I'm stuffed.
Yeah, and like, even though Bluestone opened and was successful, like, I did not get paid a cent for the first 3 years. So I funded, you know, half the money, and I was prepared to lose that. I just knew that if I lose, and, you know, I can make it up, you know, and I'm going to learn so much. And I'm so glad I did, because I had, you know, real skin in the game, in addition to the reputational risk and, of course, the sweat equity you put in as a founder. So 3 years in, I was always CEO. I was always the founder, CEO. But I had, you know, some partners along the way that were helpful and contributed and supported us getting going. But, you know, I was full-time, I was working banking, and then basically full-time Bluestone in addition, like before work, you know, lunch breaks, weekends, for 3 years, and got it to 12 locations, where we're probably doing about, it must have been 15 to 20 million revenue. And my boss at the time at ANZ, who was the head of the European Americas, and I was on the European Americas leadership team. I was sort of earmarked for a number of senior roles, and I was doing very well and being compensated well, and had loved my lifestyle, and probably thought that you know, I'd jump from an Australian bank to US bank, and you know, work there, and then transition to Hong Kong, and then eventually end up home. And you know, always that was a plan out for Alexander and I. And I had a boss who was really supportive, and he'd actually had a few entrepreneurial endeavors himself. So he thought it would be a really valuable thing and make me a better businessman and ultimately a better banker, because I would have insights that might be a little bit less orthodox, and I could probably emphasize a little bit more with founders. And he just thought it probably would help me. And but it got to the stage where everyone's drinking at Bluestone and talking about Bluestone, and it started to take a life of its own. It's always in press, like at work. And I guess there was a bit of pressure, like, how's this guy who's meant to be this, you know, he's on the leadership team for Europe and America's business. He's dealing with like our biggest clients, and, you know, he's earmarked to end up being like, you know, the CEO or something, or along that track. You know, whether I ended up there, who knows? But, you know, it just was obviously creating tension. So he brought me in and said, listen, like, you have to make a choice here. You're either going to have to like step out, or you're going to have to step in. And ANZ ended up agreeing to give me a career break, which was basically preserve my position for a year. So I went full-time at Bluestone, and you know, we grew it from, say, 12 locations to 20-something. And we were getting a lot of calls from venture capital firms, growth equity firms, private equity firms, and primarily in you know, the growth space. And they were very keen on, you know, they believed in the brand proposition, they believed in the customer and the economic model, and ultimately me as a founder and the team. So that was pretty exciting. I was getting calls, and they were saying, listen, we want to back it. We want to put in, you know, tens of millions to give this a go, and we want to be an alternative to Starbucks. So I was meant to go back in the middle of 2017, and I remember that call and saying, I'm gonna stick out. And I think it you know, the people really close to me maybe weren't shocked, but it was a lot of risk. And I think my dad, like he'd seen a lot of retailers fail. And like, to be honest, like the reason why I did both on the side was one, it couldn't afford to pay me and I didn't want to be broke and I had rent to pay and I was living in New York. Like you just can't float along. And two, I was on a great trajectory and most people I knew in hospitality were broke. Like I did not know Chris Lucas or Justin Hams or Andrew McConnell or, like really successful hospitality proprietors. I knew hospitality battlers and maybe that was because I just didn't have any exposure to the industry, but I just heard a lot of horror stories about how hard it is and you can't make money and, money pits. So I think I was just really conservative. And that's my advice to founders now. Like, if you go all in and you have to earn a certain amount because you live away from your parents or you've got real responsibilities, the economic stress that can then distract you from focusing on your business proposition is real. Like this whole notion of going all in, I think it's a fallacy. Like you can go all in when you have the ability to probably live a lifestyle or get by in a way that enables you to be to focus as an entrepreneur and build out successfully. But if every day you're thinking about how do I pay for lunch or how do I pay the staff or how do I pay my rent, I'm going to be evicted. Like, are you seriously going to be the best entrepreneur and be in the best mind space? So I think it's a delicate edge. And for me, that was the inflection point. And, that's what I decided. But, in 2020, when COVID hit and we lost 87% of our revenue in 2 weeks and I had to fire 800 staff, maybe 700 staff on 2 Zoom calls because, multiple of the team have already got COVID. I think I had COVID, but I couldn't get the test at the Dodger Stadium. And, it was right through New York. There was like 30,000 diagnosed cases when COVID hit. It was absolutely bananas what was going on in March 2020. They're the days where I was like, wow, wouldn't the comfort of a middle management banking job be great right now? You're going to be paid. You're going to work from home.
Yeah.
You're going to be on your computer and you can call your clients and they still need money and they still need capital solutions. But made it through and my life professionally has taken a few different ups and downs and roundabouts, but I think we've had an amazing year at Bluestone, probably our best ever year, where the majority of our peers have struggled and the consumer is not as vibrant and spending as fluidly as they had been in a couple of the years prior. And then you have things like Old Mates Open, and I've invested in a number of small companies I help, and then I'm on a number of boards. So I love that variety. I think I'll never ever be a person that's just like solely focused on one company. I like working across a portfolio. I love helping entrepreneurs, and that's really where I probably see the future is playing this role to help others build out their businesses and invest and support them along the way, because my skill set is quite unique. I have a different background, but ultimately, like, I love being part of teams and I love people being successful. And that is, if I look back at Bluestone, a lot of people talk about the revenue and the amount of stores and serving 110, 115,000 locals a week. Like, they're big metrics and they're big sort of what called outcomes. But I think the most joy I've got from Bluestone, outside of that unsolicited advocacy from locals, I've had people come in that are terminally ill and they go to Bluestone every day, and it's the thing that brings them a smile. Or during COVID, their escape, their daily adventure outside beyond the walls of their apartment was to go to a Bluestone, and just to have one of our teammates say, "Hi, Sally, great to see you." That was that antidote to that loneliness epidemic that has unfortunately was simmering COVID lit a match, and now it's like continuing. You see the rates of mental health and this disintermediation of human connection with digital connectivity, and like people just feeling like they're isolated or lonely. But seeing teammates promote through the Bluestone system or be promoted through the Bluestone system has been so incredibly rewarding. Someone that had never been on a salary, had only been an hourly worker, or someone that had the only annual leave they've ever been offered has been unpaid. So they never take it because they can't afford to take it because they're living paycheck to paycheck. But when you have paid time off, or you promote them to a position where they're on a salary, they have quarterly bonuses, and they get paid time off, and they might have, a contribution to their 401k or unique experiences. That is just, that's incredible. And I do think, again, that's an extension of this incredible way of life that we cannot take for granted in Australia. And we've taken those values and those customs and applied it in the US in a small way, but hopefully it's impactful. And I'm enormously proud. And if Bluestone doesn't become anywhere near as big as Starbucks, or it doesn't eventuate and fulfill all the goals, like those sort of takeaways are going to be where hopefully people think about, me and the culture of the team and my teammates, the exec team, my wife, my brother. Hey, like they made a difference. Yeah.
So, because it excites me just listening to you talk, but I want to hear a little bit about the challenge or the choice when you decide to expand and grow. So having a look at where you've expanded to and all these, you talk about New York as its own bubble to start with, and then locations within New York, but then to go to places like Texas or Philadelphia or DC or LA or San Francisco, wherever else you guys are placed. How do you make a decision on where to go next, and how do you weigh up the risk versus, all right, this city is the next best place to go? How do you make those decisions?
It's such a good question, and one that I've got wrong so many times. And I think it also depends on the life cycle. So we went through a period where we were basically trying to scale really fast to be acquired, and moving and proving the concept in a variety of different markets very early on was the right play. Like you had to have examples where it really worked, and that really spearheaded and was the impetus for the West Coast, because the West Coast is so far away. It's like Perth and Brisbane. It's like going from Brisbane, where you've built the model, and then now we're going to open in Perth. There's a lot of sort of the middle of America or even like adjacent cities that the risk in the execution is so much lower. Time zone difference. And that's a problem between like the East Coast and West. If there's a problem, I can't get to that store. Like it's going to be a day. You got to fly 5 hours, and then you got to get to the airport, and you got to, so like the fastest is 7 hours, 8 hours. Like it's not realistic. So you've got a real fire, like a real crisis. Like you're not fixing it until tomorrow. So I think that Manhattan is just like New York City's so big. It's Melbourne and Sydney combined. Like it's massive. So people talk about, you must be cannibalizing, locations now that you've got 20 in New York or 25, whatever. I'm like, no. Like there is so much white space here. Starbucks has something like 300 in New York City, or like they're everywhere, and there needs to be, because there's 8 million people. Like there's people everywhere. And then there's so many commuters that come in from Connecticut, from New Jersey, from Long Island, which is it's part of New York, but it's not part of New York City, of the 5 boroughs. So the first state or city we went to outside of New York was Philly, because we thought that was a really low risk play, because it was the closest major city to Manhattan. We could get there on train, bus, plane, or we could drive there. We went into Rittenhouse Square, which was a very sophisticated, gentrified area, and we knew that there was a ton of our core customer there, and that was millennials, primarily at that age, like students and young professionals. And they went to University of Pennsylvania, or they went to Drexel, and they were able to get to the location. It was also at the bottom of a hotel, where we knew that hotel was located nicely for those who wanted to attend sporting events or wanted to come in for business meetings or what have you. So it was a confluence of factors. But we look honestly where our core customer is or where they're going to be over the next few years. Like that is the most important thing. Because they're the ones that are most likely drinking specialty coffee or appreciate cafe experiences. So, yeah, you want to, you know, it's a very hard thing to do because you might identify exactly where to be, and data and technology really supports you in that endeavor. But then you've got to get the right size space. And then it needs to be able to work with your proposition, and some are allowed to cook and others aren't allowed to cook. And then you'll have egress, you know, which means like travel in and travel out issues. Like where do you store the trash? Where does the delivery come in? And then it's about the deal. You know, you go through all these different lenses, and then you got to be able to get a deal. Oh, it's too expensive, or the space isn't big enough, or the guarantee is too onerous, it's too risky, or the landlord's not giving us any money to build it out, or there's too much risk. Or it is so hard to actually finally do a deal, and but so that's why you've got to have so many opportunities. In the universe, you know, where you're debating and you effectively your plan and your pipeline always needs to be robust. But it actually get to the point to signing leases is tough, and like, you know, they're risky. You make a mistake, cost you $1 million.
Yeah,
like they're not just like, oh, you know, we're just trading it out. Like if you have a retail store that sell clothing, like you can bang up racks and have a counter and paint the walls and like, yeah, you could probably open for 50 grand or something, but not in hospo. Like you've got to invest in a lot more as it relates to equipment, as it relates to what they call, you know, the MEPs, like the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Like you have equipment that needs drainage, and you have waste, and you have sanitary systems and air conditioning. Like those factors are just so important, and you know, the build out's a lot more expensive. So you got to get it right. The biggest challenge we've had with real estate is when COVID hit, 2/3 of our locations were coffee shops, which were those smaller footprint, amenity-based, focused on a captive audience. Like that proposition was going to be like an annuity. Like you were going to be able to set your clock and count how many coffees you're going to sell a day. If you're in the bottom of an office tower, and everyone goes to work in the office, and it was 1 million square feet, which is 100,000 square meters, you could typically say there's a minimum of 3,500 to 5,000 workers in that building. So if you have a penetration rate of like success rate of 10%, 350 coffees a day, plus we're selling, you know, an avocado toast to every 20%. Oh, my average spend's going to be probably $8-9 multiplied by, you know, 350. Oh, okay, we're cooking. We're making, you know, whatever, $3 grand, between $3,000 and $4,000 a day, 20 grand a week, $1 million a year. Hey, this is gonna, you know, we make 20% on that. That's good money. 200 grand. The store only cost us 150 grand to open. Pay it back in 1 year. Like you could just see how the flywheel is going to work, as particularly if you're focused on these, you know, the key tenets, what we call it, as described as the key success factors. And but unfortunately, when COVID hit, not only were we in such a tough footprint, we were only in blue states, which is only in Democrat states. And the Democrats took a very conservative health stance. So social distancing, mask, not having the ability to seat people inside, quarantining people. Like, to give you an understanding of the complexity, I know I'm meant to be talking about real estate, but in New York or any of the markets we operated in, if we had a barista that tested positive for COVID, anyone that worked with that barista within 2 weeks had to be quarantined as well. So they're off. Everyone's being quarantined. Then you've got to try and bring in new teammates to work. They're being paid extra on the enhanced unemployment benefit. Then they've got to get in. They don't want to get on the subway because there's other people. So then they want to have an Uber. Then there's not enough Uber drivers. So we're then suddenly paying 50 grand a month for Uber. Like, we were navigating variables which are so incredibly complex. Now, like, people come to me sometimes with problems, or, you know, less with my team because they're pretty incredible how they deal with it autonomously. But like, I think about their real problems. I'm like, listen, I know it seems like it's an absolute crisis, but like, relatively, it's not that bad. And you know what? Don't waste it. Like, use it as a way to innovate. And that's what COVID was to us. we had this ability to trial and test things because it didn't matter. Like there was no recourse because we were stuffed and everyone was in challenge and the game was changed and it was beyond our control. Well, we could only focus on what we could control, which was this innovation and prototyping ideas and like, yeah, let's add delivery. We never did it before. Let's add mobile ordering. Let's add burritos. We've never done that before. Let's focus on pushed everything through the digital channel to grow our loyalty base. We went from nothing to 200,000 like that. There's just a lot of, we changed the way because of the quarantine. Okay, well, let's look at the roles. Let's look at how we actually prepare. Can we cross-utilize? Can we change the role and the way that we set up the store and pack down faster? And can we change the way we deliver versus, in-store? Can we quarantine the in-store experience so we don't have the delivery drivers coming in? Like it's all of those, constant innovation, and it seems pretty arbitrary, but to take it from an idea to then scale it across 30, 50, 60 locations, that's the success of Bluestone. And I think, again, like that's because that's all I've known. I didn't know how to just run a single restaurant and it's the best. All I knew was like how to build a brand, and the brand had to be consistent. So with real estate, like we went from this 2/3 coffee shop in these office buildings, 1/3 cafes in residential areas, to now where it's like 80% of the revenue comes from cafes. Only 20% comes from coffee shops. So we are very much a cafe, broader hospitality business, and that's what we're best at, because we are so focused on being these community hubs, this human sort of connection driven. I don't want to cut out service. Every day I get asked, I'll get rid of people running coffees to pay. Just tell them to collect it from the counter. Tell them to pay at the counter. I'm like, no, I want you to be able to catch up with a mate and sit down and not have to get up and queue again for another coffee.
Yeah.
Like for me, that sucks. Now for others, they like that. That's fine. So we have ways in which you can order without, through a server. You can order via our app and you can use a QR code. But by and large, our locals want hospitality. They want you to know their name, face, and order, and they want to be able to enjoy the space and the experience, the atmosphere. So that's what we're focused on. When the others, they focus on convenience and fulfillment, and that's great. The market's massive. You just got to know your value proposition inside and out, and you got to be really confident in your model. And the team needs to be able to execute your steps of service or your ways of working. And it doesn't matter if it's hospitality or if you're in a bank or if you're in a tech startup. You've got to know your role and you've got to execute your role consistent with the values and what the proposition is. And then you've got to have freedom within the framework to innovate, to liberate ideas, to keep tinkering. And that's what we're obsessed at doing at Bluestone all the time. Like we're talking about, this product would be great, or this iteration here, or we could get an improvement here. I love that. I love that problem solving.
You sound so hands-on still, like even to the level where you are now. I mean, you could probably easily handball or delegate, and maybe you sound like you're involved in so many other ventures as well. But one thing you haven't mentioned today is you're a dad to 3 kids at the same time. So how do you go about parenting while still running this massive business, while still mentoring and wanting to help other people? You sound so generous with your time and your energy and your money as well. But you've also got a wife and kids. Yeah. It wouldn't be easy.
And that's the best.
Yeah.
And there's just no possible way that you have Bluestone Lane or you have Old Mates without Alexandra, and the way that she's so selflessly supported me. And she talks about the entrepreneur's wife and the role, and she is the de facto silent co-founder in all of the ventures I've been a part of. And I've had a few other things on the side, like we built a bakery and we sold that, a gluten-free, allergen-free bakery. We did that together. Then, I ended up buying a golf course or half of a golf course in upstate New York to develop, a wellness hub up there. And, she was there the whole time. And then to have 3 incredible kids, that it is just the best, like, especially at the age. I found like the first couple of years of being a dad quite challenging and confronting. And it was also, we had our second child, Oliver, just before COVID hit. And in many respects, it brought us together in a more close way, because I stopped traveling. And, by the time we had Arabella, we'd moved to California, and I was then going back and forth because, Arabella was born in October 2018, and we closed our big venture, growth equity round with RSC Ventures in the middle of 2018. So we closed this deal. I'm on the West Coast. I'm trying to build that out, but the whole team is headquartered in New York. So it was a hard balance. And then we had Oliver. So we had Arabella in 2017. Sorry, October 2017. Then we had Oliver in August 2019, and then COVID hit. And then we had Clementine in June 2021. So it's been really tough, but it's been the best and the most rewarding. And have I got it right all the time? No, but I always had the right intention, and I think I've found a really nice balance. But Alexandra has just been extraordinary, and she's so determined. She's so stoic, and the times where it's really tough, like, she is in your corner. She's fierce. She's a Scorpio. She's a champion athlete. Like, she was, a national level 400 and 800 meter runner. And when I met her, I was like, the only people I know that like 400s or 800s are like kind of a bit strange in their head, because that was the things I hated the most at footy, and she's like thrived on it. Like, that was my favorite. And I was like, oh God. So she's she doesn't suffer fools, and she's got a thirst for challenge and pain. And we learned a lot running the marathon together back 12 years ago. We ran side by side. I think we got together, broke up, got divorced, got back together. We made it. But I love that. And it's kids are inspiring, and I'm so grateful to the parents that I have, and my brother, and the relationship with my brother. And I that's the biggest challenge with living overseas with kids, is like, you want them to be exposed to the environment that I felt that I was so fortunate to have, and have the family nest and the village around you. It would be absolutely incredible. But we haven't had that. So the closeness of our family is quite extraordinary, our immediate family. So when we come back here, it's a balance. So it's always stressful. It's never like just a joyous. It's a lot of joy, but it's like logistically so challenging, because you have all your family that want to see you. In my case, my brother lives in New York. He's married to New York, and he has 4 kids. So we've got 7 between us. So my parents, they've got their 2 sons and 7 grandkids overseas. So for them, they're starved of that.
No other siblings?
Pardon?
Just
no other
you two?
siblings, just
Wow.
us 2. So it's that's really hard.
Yeah.
And then you have Alexandra's family is incredibly close. There's 4 siblings. They're all best friends. They all have kids. And they grew up in such a tight-knit family. And they love spending time together, and my kids love their cousins. So I'm really looking forward to the day we move back. It's probably not going to be the best thing professionally, but it's going to be so good for the family. But it's a balance, and there's no perfection, and there's no prize. This whole it's like the best dad or a great dad. I think if you're committed and you understand your priorities, and you're doing things with the right intent and the right values, you're going to be generally in the right trajectory. But there is, do I spend too much time at work? Yes. Do I sometimes spend too much time with my kids? Well, maybe. I think it's just finding that balance. And, you've also got I think your own self-concept and your own inertia. And I love to be challenged, and I love to improve, and just learning and working with others brings me enormous joy. And I think that helps me be a better dad and provide also opportunities and experiences that are so unique. And even though when we get back on the plane on Sunday, Alexandra and the kids are probably going to be really sad, and that's I'm going to be sad too. But the opportunity to live and learn and have new friends, and to travel and be part of something bigger is pretty addictive as well, and enriching. So it's just getting it right. and trying your best but it's not perfection is not possible. That's for sure.
Nick, it's the last hour or so. It's been just so inspirational listening to you talk. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. And, mate, we're just so grateful we're able to squeeze you in your busy schedule while you've been in Melbourne. But before we let you go, we need to do the on the spot. Thanks to our friends at CoinSpot.
By CoinSpot. So CoinSpot, Australia's easiest and most trusted place to buy, sell, and trade your crypto,
Yes.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin and plus 500 other cryptocurrencies. And if you're like us and you think you missed the Bitcoin boat because it feels a bit overwhelming when you see how much they cost, you can get involved for as little as $1 DOS. So any of those cryptos, 500 plus, CoinSpot's the place to be. Big thank you to them.
Into Bitcoin at all?
Bitcoin's come off, so it's time.
It's dropping.
Might be time to go.
Might be time to buy now. Get your CoinSpot app ready and launch it now. We're going to do the on the spot segment, Nick. It's in post production. The lights will be dimmed and the music will hit. It's a bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We're going to ask you a quick question, and it's a multiple choice. So we'd love to know the answer. So, out of the investors at Old Mates, who would you trust to be the publican and run the pub? A, Andy Lee, B, Mick Fanning, C, Pat Cummins, or D, Paddy Mills?
Oh, I would actually go with B, Mick Fanning.
Locking in B.
The reason being is I reckon Mick would be there every day. He already has a very successful beer venture in Bolter. He's a bit of a student of the game, and I think he doesn't mind shaking hands and kissing babies. I think all of them would do a great job, that's for sure. But Mick's, a bit of a legend and has a lot of different stories. So let's go with Mick. Yeah.
Nice.
Just I don't want an explanation why, but let's reverse the answer. Who out of those four would you say, who's the first one to cross off that list? Just a name.
Surely it would be who's been there the less.
Yeah. Well, Pat Cummins.
There you go.
Pat Cummins hasn't visited us as yet. He is a big fan. He was one of the earliest investors, and I know he's chomping at the bit. But Steve Smith spends a lot more time in the club than Pat. But Pat's just obviously, he's got two young kids, and he's got a Ashes series to win.
A captaincy to uphold.
Yeah, he would. What a gentleman and scholar. We got to get him in.
You'll get him in.
Pat and Ash Barty are the only two that haven't been in. Ash has also given birth and playing scratch golf and any other sport that she tries.
Every other
She's
sport,
a freak out. So we can't wait to get Ash and Pat in. So yeah,
there's more excitement to come. Now we do have a gift.
Oh yes.
For Nick as well. So do you want to bring in the Milkman, please, Sammy? So
Nick, Milkman Australia, they've been with us for nearly the whole year, actually. They're all things men's grooming products. So you think beard care, hair care, skin care. They tell you what, we've just been over.
Haircut. I had a hat day today. I was out with the kids in the park and down in Sandringham and thought I'd represent. But
inside they've hooked you up with some deodorant. So they've got some natural deodorant, no nasties. And they've got hair powder. They've got, I think we're giving out a couple of beard combs.
Body wash.
This will fit in the suitcase as
Perfect.
well.
Cologne, well, we
bag.
got around America with those and did the job, those bags, and Milkman certainly looked after us. And we do say to anybody that wants to look and smell like Nick, which is always definitely a good option, head to milkmanaustralia.com, use the code dos&d for 20% off all those products Dos mentioned earlier.
Nick, mate, this has been unreal. Thank you so much for your time, your generosity. You're a very busy man. And it's been a privilege to sit opposite you and hear your story, mate. And congratulations on everything you've done.
So. Oh, thank you so much. And congrats to you too. And listen, come back again.
We'll see you in New York.
I'd love to host you. So we'll get the travel schedules worked out.
We will. Love it. Thanks, Nick.